Dr. Yoon, thank you for being with the Northwest Mississippi Realtors today, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, President Bill, for inviting me to share some of my thoughts in this very interesting, complicated situation in the real estate market. But realtors, being entrepreneurs, able to adapt to any new circumstances, good, bad rule that may be imposed on the industry. But the data suggests that it's been 2 years of difficulty in terms of business opportunity. That is to say, home sales being down, definitely compared to pre-COVID condition. But the factors that push the home sales down, well, those are disappearing. In other words, we are now seeing the better fundamentals appear. We all know about lower mortgage rates now, about 6.1% average compared to near 8% just 1 year ago, just 8% to 6%. This is a big move in mortgage rate. Definitely is going to bring more buyers to the market, improve some housing affordability. And the second part is we're beginning to see more inventory. We know that the lack of supply had really restricted market, but now we are beginning to see more inventory condition, and that should begin to loosen up some of the buying opportunities. So all this, I speak better with PowerPoint slide. So let me put that onto the screen and go from there. So hold 1 second as I upload the slide onto the screen. Okay, and I do believe that you can see it. And I am going to keep it on this mode, which is not a full display. Somehow my computer freezes when I try to put on full display. So hopefully this works. And I'm going to go to the very next slide. And I believe you can see it on the screen, the Fed funds rate cut. So this is the interest rate, not for you and me. It is the interest rate for the banking system that the Federal Reserve directly controls. Many Americans are a little confused that the Federal Reserve somehow controls mortgage rates. They do not. Federal Reserve does not directly control mortgage rates. Indirectly, they can influence mortgage rate by controlling this blue line. So what the Federal Reserve did, as we know, was that 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, Fed did the first rate cut after being this elevated interest rate for some time. So the graph begins from 2019. And then we had the COVID stimulus and then high interest rate environment because inflation got out of control. But now Fed cutting interest rate in the hopes that the mortgage rate would go down. Well, I think that hope has turned into reality because mortgage rate again today is 6% or a little above 6% compared to 8% 1 year ago. Mortgage market has already adjusted for this rate cut, not only one and done, but when the Federal Reserve cuts interest rate, it is the beginning of a cycle. There will be multiple rounds of rate cuts into the future, but those future rate cut is already reflected in the mortgage rate. So some consumers who may wonder, should I wait for the second rate cut to occur? By the way, the second rate cut will be the day after the election. I know we have a very polarized presidential election condition, but the day after the election, there will be the second rate cut and more rate cut throughout 2025. So should people wait for the next rate cut? And answer is absolutely not, because mortgage rate has already incorporated. So the 6% rate could be the new normal, irrespective of how many further rate cut by the Federal Reserve, because it's already incorporated into those expectations. Now, if we look at why the Federal Reserve cut interest rate, is because the inflation rate is coming down. This is not about home price inflation. This is about consumer price inflation. Price of medical service, price of grocery bill, price of the gasoline, all combined, college tuition, everything. So what the graph shows you is that the Federal Reserve wants to see 2% consumer price inflation. But now they are saying 2.5% inflation. It's not 2%, But the Federal Reserve somehow is convinced that it is headed towards 2%. Currently, the strike among some of the dock workers on shipping, especially on the East coastal area, everything from Houston to Mobile, all the way down to the Florida, that may actually raise inflation in the short term, depending upon how long the strike lasts. But the inflation approaching 2% was enough for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rate. Now, if you see in the middle of the chart, the big bump, that is 2 summers ago. 2 summers ago, you went to the grocery shop and then you came out very angry. You said, what the heck happened? Well, today, when you go to grocery store, prices are not cheaper. Prices are still rising, but it is no longer a shock factor. In a sense, we are used to higher grocery bill today. So at least it's rising only by 2% and not sudden big changes that happened 2 summers ago. And that's why the Federal Reserve, I think, is cut interest rate. The second reason as to why the Federal Reserve cut interest rate is because the job market is not as strong as what the government thought. So there was a revision in the government data about jobs about 3 weeks ago. So 3 weeks ago, let me explain what this chart is. This is how many Americans are receiving paycheck. We are working, receiving a paycheck. Right before COVID, around 150 million Americans. Then we had the COVID lockdown, which destroyed the economy. But then once the economy reopened steadily, there was more job, and more job. And Mississippi said, look, we cannot lock up people at their home. We need to liberate people. So Mississippi was one of the first states to say, okay, you can go about, do your business. But this shows as the economy steadily reopened, more job. And initially, the government thought there was 6.5 million more jobs compared to pre-COVID. Well, 3 weeks ago, they revised down. 5.7 is very respectable, but it is a downward revision, not as strong as what it was thought, and therefore Federal Reserve, again, another reason for cutting interest rate. But before the rate cut, or in anticipation of the rate cut, this is what the realtors face with their clients. This shows the income required to buy a medium-priced home in America. So pre-COVID, 2020 and prior, if American family had a $50,000 or $60,000 in annual income, they had a decent shot of buying a medium-priced home. Not a McMansion, expensive, just a medium-priced home. So earning $50,000 was sufficient. Well, because of higher interest rate environment, along with higher prices, income required to buy a home was $100,000. I mean, this is incredibly big change, which is the reason why there was so few home sales past couple of years. And let me illustrate that by this chart, which shows the pending contracts. The recent months essentially at near record lows since we began tracking the information from 2001. So very difficult environment for home buyers because income required to buy a home, to take out a mortgage, went really sky high. I put 2 red boxes to illustrate a couple of different points. The first red box is 2009, 2010 period, when we had the massive foreclosure crisis. I think some realtors who remember during those times would remember that NAR advocated for, and thank you for people who participate in RPAC contribution, your investment in the politics of America, free speech process. So that opens up communication in Congress, and we were able to get a home buyer tax credit. Buy a home and you get $8,000. And people responded to those incentives. So you see the peak that is occurring. So you see the peak. Then it got extended. So we got the second peak to stabilize the housing and to get the economy moving forward. So that's what happened. Well, today, we don't need home buyer tax credit in a sense because it's really more about supply. We want to have more supply. So back then, when we had abundance of foreclosed property, we need somebody to buy those property or even any property. So here was $8,000. But now what NAR is really pushing for is lifting of the capital gains tax exemption. Realtors talk with their clients to say, you buy a home, and when you sell it later, 5 years later, 7 years later, when you sell it, the appreciation you got from home, that is all yours. Capital gains is yours. Because we know about the exemption amount of $250,000 and $500,000 for married couple, 250 for single, $500,000 for married couple. Well, because of the price increases, especially some homes are now beginning to hit those targets. So therefore, some homeowner who decide to sell suddenly realize there could be a tax implication, and they change their mind and say, no, I don't want to put my home on the market if the government is going to take some of my profits out. So NAR currently is trying to advocate for lifting of the capital gains amount. The figure, which has not been changed for 25 years, that $250,000, $500,000, that figure has not been changed for 25 years. Just think about what the price of movie ticket was 25 years ago, price of hamburger 25 years ago. NAR is just requesting index to inflation. Just like Social Security check is indexed to inflation, index capital gains amount to the inflation amount. So maybe we get a little additional supply. The second box is the COVID situation. So first, the lockdown. Once the lockdown finished, record low interest rate environment, people took advantage. But after that red box, you see the sales decline because of higher interest rate environment. But thankfully, now we have a little more manageable mortgage rate at 6% rather than 8% of 1 year ago. So home sales, when I look at the data, this is the closing, the commission checks, how much are we getting? So the early post-COVID, we had a boom, low interest rate, then 2 years of decline, 2 straight years of decline, very tough business opportunity for the realtors out there. Your past clients, homeowners are happy. They're seeing rise in home prices. They're not under distress. So your past clients are all happy. It's just that your business opportunity was limited in the past couple of years. So when I look at the Northwest Mississippi data, so Amanda and her team does very well in terms of generating the data, make it available to you. You go to the website and you can see it. So what you are finding is now there's a little more listings. And also the pending contract is now close to 0 from 1 year ago, which is a good sign. So at least we have to cross the 0 line before turning positive. So now we're essentially close to the 0. The closed sale, because there's some time lag involved, year to date, on the right-hand column, it is down 3% from 1 year ago, but again, very close to 0. You want to reach the 0 and then turn positive. And the days on the market beginning to lengthen, but home prices essentially at an all-time high. Your past clients are happy, but now maybe with increased inventory, lower mortgage rate, you will have more business opportunity and more Americans beginning to realize their American dream of ownership. So that's the case for the realtors. Let me now turn to the home builders. Because home builders have a little different story compared to realtors. We think of home builders as essentially in the same business as realtors. I know many couple. One is a realtor, their spouse is a home builder. They are in the same business. But home builders have already recovered. For the past 12 months, they're seeing increased sales. So realtors were not seeing increased sale, but home builders were. So why are the home builders seeing increased sale? And the answer is there's more inventory of newly built homes. So by historical standards, the builders have doubled the inventory availability, and consequently, they can do more deals. I know some builders are providing incentive, mortgage rate buy down, maybe some free appliances. But right now, the builders are making the sale, and especially the publicly listed builders like KB Homes, NAR, their stock prices have almost tripled in the past couple of years. So very big optimism in the Wall Street because where there is inventory, they can do more sales. In Northwest Mississippi, along with rest of the country, we are beginning to see more inventory in the established neighborhood. So people are beginning to list their property, and maybe that is a very good early indicator for more business opportunity for the realtors. Because home builders are already smiling, they have the inventory, but I think the realtors will soon be smiling because the inventory will be coming. Most of the inventory is on the existing home, not the builders, on the existing established neighborhood. We had an inventory shortage, and consequently, home prices lifted. Now, sorry for the small numbers here. This charts will be available to you. I will send it to Amanda, and Amanda will distribute to people who requested. How much home price appreciation from pre-COVID to latest available? So Mississippi is showing, let me see, 52% price appreciation. So just consider your client, your past client, or you specifically individual, you have seen 52% home price appreciation in the past 4 years. So this is quite remarkable due to the lack of supply. Yesterday, last night, vice presidential debate. Of course, there's all this, differences in viewpoints. It's part of the democratic process. But one thing that was commonality was both J.D. Vance as well as Governor Walz indicated we have lack of supply. We need to do more, remove the red tape so we can bring more supply to the market. I hope also they listen to about the capital gains exemption, maybe, because we need more supply onto the market. But your past clients are happy, have seen a dramatic price appreciation. My correction, Mississippi, 42% price appreciation. Neighboring state of Alabama, 52%. And Louisiana, which is struggling with jobs, only with 24% price appreciation. So 42% appreciation in Mississippi doing well. And also Tennessee, you are close to Tennessee. Tennessee seeing 65% price appreciation in Tennessee. Let me, for going into the Memphis area price movement from year 2000 to the most recent. So the Memphis metro area would actually cover a couple of counties in Arkansas, along with a couple of counties in the Northwest Mississippi. So he's covering this broad area. So it's not only Tennessee, but 3 states combined, the greater Memphis metro area. So what you see is that historically, home prices only move in the single digit, 5%. The first red box is the foreclosure crisis, when the prices turn negative. But generally, home prices would rise in a single digit rate, except when the COVID occurred, boom, price appreciation of better than 20% in a single year in 2022. But as you can see recently, price growth has completely calmed down. It's only 2 or 3%. You see it in the Northwest Mississippi data. So price appreciation condition, but this is the overall price movement indicating why homeowners have done so well. And in fact, here's the chart. I should have put renters and homeowners in different colors. My mistake on the coloring. But you see the graph with one showing huge wealth, other with little wealth. But the huge wealth is homeowners. Little wealth is renters. Renters have virtually nothing, while homeowners have their home. They're getting the home price appreciation. Intuitively, we know renters are just spinning their wheels. They're not building wealth, but homeowners build wealth in America. And this is the data from the Federal Reserve. With the new buyer agency form, I'm sure you get a lot of questions. What is this? What is that? And you will answer professionally all those questions. But at some point, if they ask question after question, show this chart to say you have to own a home in order to build wealth in America. My parents bought their home when the mortgage rates were 15%. I bought my first home when the mortgage rates were 8%. Many Americans bought their home when the mortgage rates were 10%. But independent of when they purchase, they are building wealth, because in America, one can always refinance when the interest rate decline, and you are always generally seeing price appreciation. So important information that you want to share with any first-time buyers, objective data, factual data. Here it is. You have to own piece of America to have the wealth generating opportunity. So the inventory level has been low, which perked up prices. But what we are now beginning to see is inventory of realtors. Remember, home builders' inventories are rising, but the realtors' inventory have not, except in the past 12 months. Right now, inventories are up about 20% nationwide from 1 year ago. I showed you the Northwest Mississippi data showing more inventory. So why is the inventory beginning to rise? Because homeowners have 3% mortgage rate or even 2.8% mortgage rate. And we have heard they love their low interest rate. They will never give that up. They will never list their homes onto the market. We have heard that, but people are beginning to list because, and this is the, I guess, Northwest Mississippi, again, showing more inventory, just like Nation, seeing more inventory this year than before. But why are people listing? Even though interest rate lock-in effect is very low, because life has changed. In a 12-month time span, the following occurs in America: 3.5 million newborn babies. So some family with a small size home, they have 3% mortgage rate, but now with the additional child in the family, they need a larger size home. They have to give up their 3% mortgage rate and trade up, list their property and trade up. 1.5 million marriages happen in America. I mean, marriage is generally very good information about home buying, but also it is listing as well, because some of these marriages are second marriage, third marriage among older couple. Two people get together, one home, put it on the market. 700,000 divorces, some complication in some cases, listing of property coming onto the market. 3.5 million Americans turn 65 in a single year. Some people may want to downsize. They want to have little additional cash reserve, sell the home, have a little cash, and maybe they can use their cash for their retirement years. So maybe they want to trade down. 2 million death, sons and daughters. What are they going to do with that inherited property? They don't want to deal with it. Estate sale. Let's do the estate sale. Let's move it on. And then there are job switches. So job switches, some are inconsequential. You are working for Starbucks and now you are working at a restaurant, no big deal. But other job requires different commuting patterns. Maybe somebody who was in Mobile, Alabama, now has a job near the Memphis suburbs and the Mississippi side. And maybe, you know, there's a job relocation. So they still have job, but now they need different housing. What about remote work? Because we are seeing in the big cities, office vacancy rates are very high, which means there's a lot of degree of remote work. And it's a remote work. Why stay near those big expensive cities when one can buy a mansion in Northwest Mississippi at a lower home price than in the big cities? So I think this will lead to more listing onto the market. And next year, again, another 3.5 million babies born. So this demographic life-changing events occurs more and more over time. So the impact of the lock-in effect, low interest rate lock-in effect, becomes less strong over time. And we have already turned a corner. More inventory in your area, more inventory rest of the country, and this will steadily increase. But one area of inventory that you will not see is distressed property inventory. How many Americans are seriously delinquent on their mortgages, miss mortgage payment for 3 straight months or longer? In the middle of the graph, that's when the risky subprime loans blew up back in 2010 period, 2009. And then the second little bump that you see is COVID stimulus. As part of the COVID stimulus, you could not pay your mortgage? Well, just postpone it. No big deal. So some people took advantage of it. But look what it is today. Record low delinquency, very little in the pipeline to turn into foreclosed property. So just be mindful of that. So we will have more inventory from life-changing events, but not from distressed property sales. For the sake of time, let me just go into this and then go into the job market. So quickly summarizing what I have discussed is that we will see inflation continue to calm down, and therefore the Federal Reserve can cut interest rate 6 to 8 rounds. Whoever is occupying the White House will see Federal Reserve is cutting interest rate in 2025. They have already done so. They will do it day after the election and also in 2025. But we do have two big red flags to consider. The first red flag, which is actually the very last line, I think we may have housing rental shortage 3 years from now. Not at the moment, but 3 years from now, we may have a rental housing shortage. And the reasoning for that is we are seeing very few developers taking out new permit to build apartments. And it takes about 2 or 3 years to complete the apartment. So given few housing permit for apartments, 2 or 3 years from now, we may have apartment shortage. So that could begin to boost rents, and that could begin to lead to higher inflation. And the Federal Reserve has to increase interest rate about 3 years from now. And the second point is large budget deficit. And let me illustrate that with this graph. Easy to observe. Red line is all government spending. The green line is the tax revenue you sent to Washington on April 15th. So first half of the graph, two lines match up, no big deal. Then we see budget deficit opening up. What is the impact of budget deficit? It means that government has to borrow, leaving less private capital for the rest of the economy. In other words, there could be less mortgage money available because government is just soaking up so much of the private capital. So even as the Federal Reserve cuts interest rate, mortgage rate decline could be limited because government is borrowing on so much. So why do we have deficit? People can say, let's raise the green line, let's bring in more tax revenue. Other people say, let's bring the red line down. We are spending way too much. Did you know that in New York City, the commercial real estate practitioners are suffering? I heard this when I attended commercial real estate conference recently. They said office market stinks. Pretty much everything stinks except for one sector. In the hotels, hotel owners are raking it in New York. Why? Well, 1/3 of the supply of hotel room went to the migrants. And we know that the recent migrants don't have the money to pay for the hotel. So someone is paying for that. It's a part of the red line that's contributing to it. But because of the reduced supply of hotel room availability, people who want to travel to New York as a tourist, well, because of limited supply, the hotel room are so expensive now. So hotel owners are just raking it in. But I just want to illustrate that we are spending a lot of money on many, many factors. And we hear from Americans, they're very uncomfortable with this illegal border crossing, chaotic border crossing. If we need more workers, let's do it in an orderly process. Even if it's a temporary agricultural workers or someone working at a meat factory, well, let's bring in with temporary visa in an orderly process. But I think Americans are very uncomfortable with the chaotic uncontrolled and certainly is impacting, I'm sure, some of the red line, definitely as illustrated in what's happening in New York City with hotel, about 1/3 of the hotel room taken out of the system and given to migrants. So anyway, large budget deficit just means less mortgage money available. So my forecast on the mortgage rate is the following. The blue line shows that what the Federal Reserve is doing, but you are more concerned about the red line, top line. That's the mortgage rate. Mortgage rate has already declined from 8% to 6%. Any further decline from this point, I think, will be minimal. Someone who's waiting for 3% mortgage rate, it's not going to happen. 4% mortgage rate, it's not going to happen. 5%, just maybe. 5.5%, possibility. But I think we are at new normal of around 6%, a little higher, a little lower for most of 2025, even as the Federal Reserve cuts interest rate because we have large budget deficit. We should never think that government spends money here and there for whatever it is that as a free lunch. There is a cost, and the cost is showing up in the mortgage rate not able to decline when the Federal Reserve is cutting interest rate. Also, just want to illustrate, now that we have more inventory, the FHA borrower and the veteran affairs mortgages, those have government guarantees. Of course, in a multiple offer, people using FHA has no chance of getting into the market. But now we have more inventory, FHA borrowers, VA borrowers have better chance to get into the market, and they carry lower interest rate because of government guarantee. So just be mindful that even though average mortgage rate is 6.2, the FHA and VA mortgages are under 6% already. Job market, and I'm going to wrap it up. So this is the job situation across the country from pre-COVID to recently. So you look at Mississippi, Mississippi is showing 2.9%, showing 2.9% more job today compared to pre-COVID. Louisiana has not recovered because when I talk to Louisiana realtors, they're saying all this gas, liquefied gas, which could really boost the Louisiana economy. Well, that's not happening. Somehow there's a lot of restriction on that. So there's no job creation in liquefied gas export condition. But Arkansas, 6.4% more job. Tennessee, 6.1% more job. Many states have more job. Dark blue is a fast job creating areas. Florida, Texas, Rocky Mountain states, and the Carolinas. Fast job creating area. So you can't say Mississippi is sort of lagging behind other southern states. But compared to northern states, Mississippi would be right at the average or slightly above the northern state job creation. But compared to other southern states, Mississippi one step behind others. At the timeline is the following. So again, greater Memphis area covering Arkansas along with Mississippi, that a few counties. So what this shows from year 2000 to recent is the first job market fluctuates. Sometimes you have good years, other times job losses. The middle of the graph shows the foreclosure crisis job losses. But in essence, what it shows is that right now there's about 20,000 more people working in the greater Memphis, Northwest Mississippi area compared to year 2000. This is all potential housing demand, but the condition has to be right. What is the better condition? More inventory. You are getting that. And second, lower mortgage rates. So mortgage rate, new normal, 6%. Well, you can't say, is it a good rate or not? Well, that's what the rate is. 6% is better than what it was 1 year ago, but I don't think it will go down much longer. So to wrap it up, a couple of more slides. One, this is office vacancy rate. Now, office market is not so important in your area, but rising office vacancy just means that you will be the beneficiary. So the big city downtown areas will suffer, but they will seek either outer suburbs because they don't have to go to offices, or if it's 100% remote, people will completely get out of San Francisco, people will completely get out of New York and seek more affordable regions of the country. So you will be partial beneficiary of this trend. And my final forecast is just a home sales forecast, business opportunity. 2019, that's the first data reference point. 2020 and 2021, low interest rate, more sales, you were busy. 2022, higher interest rate, sales decline. And you said, well, we know it's housing market goes up and down, no big deal. But last year was painful, even way below pre-COVID. This year, still not recovering yet because most of the year was higher interest rate, 7% or higher interest rate. So far this year, not recovering. So we had 2 years of a bummer, 2023 and 2024. But the factors for higher sales are developing, lower mortgage rates, more inventory, definitely boost in 2025. But I think only in 2026, we are going to get back to pre-COVID home sales activity. So thank you very much for allowing me to share some of my thoughts with you all. And now I'm going to turn it over to President Bill.
Thank you, Dr. Yoon, for being with us today. Great information. We're tickled to see the positive forecast for the next 2 years, and hope that all comes to fruition. Do you have time for any questions, or
let's take 2 questions.
Okay. If there are any, y'all can put them in the chat. One, do you think with the devastation of the hurricanes in the southeastern states, along with the port closings, that we're going to see an impact on housing and housing building materials and stuff over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I visited Boone, North Carolina, early part of the year. And I said, wow, America the beautiful. There are so many places in America. It's truly beautiful. But to see the devastation, where Appalachian State University is, the downtown area where I actually walked through, now just complete devastation. So NAR always advocates for the need for the flood insurance. So that hopefully the property owners there, at least they get to recover some of the cost aspect. The lumber, with the material cost rising because we need more supply, more supply. As related to, trying to get people back on their feet, I'm sure there will be some national emergency, some funding availability. So we definitely don't want somebody who suddenly are devastated to say, okay, now you have to, the home should go under foreclosure. It should be, that should not be happening. And I'm sure that, NAR will be communicating that message and the policymaker will clearly acknowledge that no one should be foreclosed on their home for some natural disaster that occurred. So yeah, it's truly heartbreaking in terms of what the visuals that I see over there.
Good. Thank you. And I don't see any questions in the chat. Amanda, if I'm incorrect, please let me know. Um, but anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Yoon. Are you going to be in Boston in November at the
Yes, I will be.
conference? Good. We look forward to seeing you there. Your messages are always just inspiration for us all, and we appreciate you and the work you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.